We're getting bold today, people. Records will fall, but which ones? Plus, we are joined by a special guest. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks, which is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. What is up, party people? Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks from horseshoehuddle.com with you once again, together again for the first time in what seems like the longest time. Today, we're going to move our focus from the pre-bye portion of the Colts calendar towards their final 7 games, and we're going to get bold, making some bold predictions both on the offense and the defense. However, most importantly, we are joined by a very special guest today. He is Ben Arthur. He's the Fox Sports AFC South reporter. You can find his work on foxsports.com and on the Fox Sports app, or you can follow him on social media at Ben Y. Arthur, at BenYArthur. What's up, Ben? Welcome to the show. Great last name. Perfect spelling as well.
Yep. No, always happy to help out a fellow person with the same last name. But Jake, appreciate you having me on, and good to see you, Zach. Happy to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, the AFC South has not always been the best division to cover, but it's finally we're getting into better days here. It's a nice new crop of young quarterbacks. Things are getting more competitive and everything. But specifically, this is a Colts podcast. So sitting at 5-5 so far, finally riding a winning streak again. What is your gauge or your impression on this Colts team so far through their first 10 weeks?
I think the biggest impression is that I'm kind of surprised that they are where they are, considering all that has happened, kind of losing Anthony Richardson, and then obviously the offensive struggles that they've had. But big credit to the defense these last 2 weeks, right? I mean, sacking Mac Jones 5 times last week. The week before that, Kenny Moore had the game of his life with 2 pick sixes. And so it's really been the defense these last couple games, but then it was the offense that was playing at a high level like prior to that. I guess it's kind of just been interesting to see the fact that we've seen kind of both sides of the ball play well, but maybe not necessarily at the same time. And so, I'm really fascinated to see what's going to happen down the stretch for the Colts, just because of how interesting the AFC is. I mean, there are so many teams in it right now. The Colts at 5-5 are right in the thick of it. I think there are only 2 teams in the AFC that have more than 6 wins, and that's the Chiefs and the Ravens. And so, I did not think, just with everything, you just think of everything the Colts have dealt with, right? And not just Anthony's injury, but also Grover Stewart being suspended. I'm trying to think about what else has
lots of injuries on especially at cornerback.
That's kind of the big thing, right? How much they've struggled in the back end with the pass defense. All the issues they've had back there. I think the biggest thing about this Colts team is just their ability to overcome and be resilient. And I know those can kind of be like sort of buzzwords in football and in the NFL, but I think this team like literally embodies that. I mean, they've like the mentality, just obviously I'm not based in Indy, but the mentality is just totally different than what it was last year. We know what the disaster, what it was last season, and already having more wins than they did all of last year, and kind of what Shane Steichen has brought in, and being able to adjust from Anthony Richardson to Gardner Minshew, and then we have to remember Jonathan Taylor missed those first 4 games of the season too, amid the injury and then the contract stuff too. So this team's been through a lot, but they're right in the mix, right? I know DeForest Buckner spoke to it at the end of the Germany game, but yeah, I think that's the thing I'm most surprised with about this team is just the fact that they're still in it, how resilient, how gritty of a team that this team is.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting when you look at this Colts team is, like you said, this AFC playoff race is absolutely insane. I mean, you really only have one team in the AFC that's not going to make the play, or like it has no chance at the playoffs, which is the Patriots. Like the Tennessee Titans are probably close to being out as well, but for the most part, every other team in the AFC is in that race for the playoffs. And it's not like we're in week 2, we're in week 10 at this point. Week 11's coming up. So how does a resilient team without top quarterback play and with inconsistent defensive play, where does that team kind of fall for you in this AFC playoff picture? Like, do you see them as having a good chance or any chance at making the playoffs, or are they just kind of one of those frisky, resilient teams that's just going to give other teams trouble down the stretch?
Yeah, I don't want to completely rule the Colts out just because of those things, right? Like the friskiness, the resilience, the grittiness nature that this team has embodied. I don't personally see them getting into the playoffs, and maybe some of the Colts fans listening will kind of hate me for that. I don't see it happening. But yeah, I think the fact that they are at this point, this late in the season, with all the injuries, all the issues, all the distractions that they have is really impressive. And you spoke briefly on the Titans, and I think we have to remember too, like, and this is just my AFC South big picture brain working, but the Titans have only played 1 division game to this point. They have 5 division games left, and under Mike Vrabel, they've had a lot of issues this year, right? But Mike Vrabel has been very, very good in the division. There are probably only maybe 1 or 2 teams that have been better in the division, like with a particular coach, than like Mike Vrabel. And so I'm not sure we should completely be counting them out either. But yeah, I mean the Colts have a favorable schedule, right? These last 7 games, I think only 3 of the teams they have left have winning records in the Bengals, the Texans, and the Steelers. And then they have the Bucks up next. They kind of have some issues, and so yeah, there's certainly opportunity there. And I don't want to say like it's not going to happen. Personally, I'm not sure that it does. But again, the fact that they are in the mix this late in the season with all the issues and problems that they've had has been particularly impressive to me.
Yeah, great. Appreciate it, Ben. That's all we really have time for with you today, but thank you again for joining. Again, you guys can find his work over at foxsports.com and the Fox Sports app, or follow him on social media at Ben Y Arthur, Ben BenYarthur. Ben, appreciate you joining us. And again, we're going to get that optimism up a little bit more for the Colts going forward. When Gardner Minshew starts slinging it for 400 yards again, then we're going to be feeling good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll appreciate you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man.
Yep.
PrizePicks is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. With the basketball season here, you can now pick a combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. I watch the NBA all the time. I watch the NFL obviously all the time. So you could do something like LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. It's a really, really cool offer that PrizePicks has there. And PrizePicks even offers the greatest policy in all of daily sports, and that is reboot policy. The reboot policy is perfect for people like me who are just the most unlucky of all time when it comes to these things. So for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use code LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use code LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. And Everydayers, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Jake, so we're getting into some bold predictions here. I know you had a really bold one concerning Jonathan Taylor that I very much disagree with. Like I'm very much not agreeing with this one at all.
Okay.
But you go with this one, Jake. What's your Jonathan Taylor bold prediction that you have here?
Let me fly. Yeah, so I honestly had to kind of talk myself into this one as well, but I wanted something involving Jonathan Taylor. So I say that Jonathan is just going to hit a hot streak. Again, seven games left, and he's going to finish in the top 5 of the NFL in rushing. Now, mind you, missed those first 4 games, so he has all the business in the world not to finish top 5. But we've seen this from him throughout his career, saved for last season. He typically does not start out super hot. He gets much better as the season goes. So he's got, what is it, like 5 games under his belt now for this season. They're entering the bye week. They can kind of now self-scout and see what they want to do moving forward. Our defense is going to keep preparing to stop him, absolutely, because they want Gardner Minshew to beat them. But that wasn't a deterrent before. We saw in 2021 the Colts very much had to hide Carson Wentz, and Jonathan Taylor was just crushing things still. And as much as this is about the Colts and Jonathan Taylor, it's also about the landscape of the NFL, because currently Zach Moss is still 5th in the NFL in rushing with 617 yards. And he hasn't had a game with 10-plus touches in like 3 weeks. So if that goes to tell you, it's very, very top-heavy at rushing. Taylor has almost no chance of leading the league in rushing. That's not where I'm going with it. But I do think he's going to hit a really hot streak and finish in the top 5. He's currently sitting at 323. And to crack the top 5, for example, Moss is at 617. So if he strings together, it's going to take multiple 100, even 150-yard games. It's going to have to be a regular thing. But we saw him start to dominate the backfield shares recently as well. 85% of the offensive snaps against the Patriots. So we've kind of seen it from him before. I think he's going to do it again.
I just need to see more from him this season before I can get that bold with him, because I don't think there's been a game this year where I've seen him out there where I'm like, oh, there's Jonathan Taylor. He's back. There's been moments. There's like that New Orleans Saints game where there was moments where I'm like, okay, cool. This looks like Jonathan Taylor again, but he still looks a little tentative, hitting the holes. He still looks like he's dancing a little bit. He looks like he's shying away from contact a little bit. Like once I see that first play where he's exploding through the hole and he's running over somebody, then I'll be with you, Jake, because he obviously can do this type of stuff. And like you mentioned perfectly, this is not a great year for running. When I saw Zach Moss still in the top 5, I was as shocked as you were when I saw that. When I saw Josh Jacobs in the top 5, as someone who has Josh Jacobs in fantasy, I was like, there's no chance that he's in the top 5. He shouldn't even be in the top 50 with the way he's been doing for me in fantasy at times. But that's just the nature of the running back position this year. So I'm not saying it's out of the question, but I think it's going to be a little tough. Now, I'm keeping on offense, obviously, because it's our offensive segment here, but I'm going to go with the most promising young rookie on this team, or just the young rookie that's still playing, and that is Josh Downs. I think Josh Downs easily breaks the Colts rookie reception record, which is, I think, at 65, and he's already at 43. So
yeah,
he's going to almost certainly break that one unless this knee injury does nag him for the rest of the season. But the more bold prediction is breaking the rookie receiving yards record of 1,131 that Bill Brooks also set back in the 80s. Bill Brooks had a fantastic season, by the way.
Yeah, went bonkers as a rookie, my God.
Yeah, absolutely bonkers. Our older listeners can tell us all about that in the comments section here. But I think Downs has an outside chance at getting to that. Now, it would take, around 80-ish, 90 yards per game down the stretch here. So it's going to take a lot from him. But we've seen him kind of just hit that next level, that next gear in recent weeks. I mean, I know he was slowed down this past game with that knee injury and he left early the week before, but we saw right before that he was starting to get this expanded roll down the field. He was starting to get more vertical shots. He was getting more on those, those recess type plays where Gardner Minshew is scrambling. He's more of the target on those. And he also has the scheme touches in the slot for those quick hitters. And he's starting to do more things after the catch as well. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibilities for him to hit around 1,200 yards receiving this year, because we have seen his play just get better and better every single week. As long as that knee heals up here on the bye week, I really do see a very realistic possibility where he hits, around 1,200 yards, even with the state of the quarterback play that the Colts have right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's someone that Gardner obviously looks to constantly, and no matter how poorly Gardner is doing, like the top two receivers are always going to be kind of productive still.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could see it happening. Their yards is definitely the one that's a little tougher, because that's like right around where Michael Pittman is projected to finish right now. And he's been really, really productive all season. But I mean, it could happen. I mean, he's just a little over 500 right now. So just upping his pace a little bit from where he's been, and it's possible. I definitely think he's going to kill the receptions record.
Yeah.
So he's only like 20 behind that one. So my last one is Quentin Nelson is not going to be the Colts' only Pro Bowl offensive lineman this year. And I'm not talking about Ryan Kelly. I'm talking about Bernhard Raimann. I think he's going to get that first Pro Bowl nod this year. He is a younger player that a lot of people already knew about, and he's kind of defying the odds as a third-round pick. He has been staunch, both as a run defender, and he's not been the turnstile that a lot of people saw him being early on as a rookie either. He has fully built on what he showed in the second half of last season. I know you just spoke about him extensively as well on the last show, so I'll kind of turn it over to you in a minute. But as much as Ryan Kelly is a multiple Pro Bowler and might even make it again, who knows? This is more about Raimann finally earning a shot at Pro Bowl. And offensive tackles for the Colts have not been the most rewarded. Quentin Nelson obviously had like a highlight reel of plays early in his career that helped him get those nods. But I think a lot of people, and this could come from the player and the coach voting more so than the player voting or the fan voting. But I think a lot of people around the NFL are really starting to take notice of the impact that this guy is having. He's keeping Gardner pretty clean. Like his numbers are very eye-opening when it comes to where he started in his career.
Yeah, when it comes to Bernhard Raimann, it really comes down to that second tackle spot that's going to be behind Laremy Tunsil, because Tunsil's going to make it for sure, as long as he stays healthy the rest of the season. So it really comes down to that next tackle spot after that. And then after that, it really comes down to, do they go for the name value, which Pro Bowl typically does, and just goes with some older player that everybody knows? Or do people start voting according to what Pro Football Focus ratings are, what Pro Football Focus stats are? Because if you're voting off of what PFF stats are putting out there, yeah, Raimann is easily a Pro Bowl tackle this season. But if you're voting like, Ronnie Stanley, I know that name, even though he's barely played for the Ravens, and, I'll vote him in. Or, or like a bigger fan base votes all of their players in just because they like their own players and stuff. That really is what it comes down to there with the Pro Bowl. But I think if we're talking based off play, I think Bernhard Raimann has a really good chance at making the Pro Bowl. And I think he's been doing some really good things for the Colts this year.
When it comes to the fan vote, Raimann does have all of Europe.
He does.
So he's
so 20 votes is pretty good. That's an extra 20 to 30 votes.
Domestically, all of Colts Nation, and then all of Europe. Don't let Zach say it's a small number. I know we have overseas listeners because I see it in our metrics.
That's
so
true.
You guys pipe in on the comments and let us know that Raimann is definitely going to the Pro Bowl. So coming up here in a second, we're going to get to our bold predictions on the defensive side of the ball. Whenever the game clock stops, that's time to order in with DoorDash. Why root for your favorite team on an empty stomach? That's no fun. Order DoorDash and save on all of your football watch party favorites. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. And I have told you guys all about how much I use DoorDash. I have a problem, and I don't care at all. I am always thinking about food and what I'm going to be ordering on DoorDash. Most recent victim was crumble cookies last night. It's almost the weekend, so cabin coffee, it's going to be going down. And then guess what? The Colts are on a bye on Sunday, which means I won't be working, which means I will be eating whatever I want, and it will be coming from DoorDash. So if you're thinking of starting on DoorDash, we've got a great deal. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Don't forget to use code LOCKED23 for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change, terms apply. All right, Zach. So this is for you just as much as it is for Kenan. I know you're watching and or listening. Dayo Odeyingbo, who currently leads the Colts with 6 sacks right now, is going to finish the season with 10 plus sacks. I honestly, it seems bold to say it's coming from Dayo, and before the season we wouldn't have said that. But he literally just needs to have one more game like he did on Sunday to like be knocking on the door.
Yeah.
Like that, guys who are second wave pass rushers don't necessarily have multiple 3-sack games, but the guy is halfway there already, and he's been on a hot streak. The guy has been. This Sunday wasn't just like a flash in the pan. You know what I mean? He's been building up to this. He had a sack against Carolina. He's been getting half sacks in here and there. The guy is turning it on, and if you look at the tape, he's not just winning with the effort anymore. He's actually winning with an intentional plan. And so he's becoming a very good pass rusher. And, whether it's, kicking inside, stunting and things like that, I think the guy knows what he's doing now. And he's becoming a very, very good pass rusher for the Colts.
Yeah, it'd be big, I think, for him just to hit that 10 sack number. Now, again, I don't agree with Pro Football Focus on a lot of their way they count stats, but I do agree with their sack counting stats. So they actually have him at 8 already because they count half sacks as full sacks, which I agree it should be a full sack. So they have him at 8 already. So your prediction doesn't seem that bold, Jake, if you're looking
Right.
But I do think in the NFL stat keeping, he's at 6.5 right now, I believe, 6.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be huge just for him to hit that 10 sack number. Now, the Colts haven't had a 10 sack player since I think Justin Houston a couple years ago. Even DeForest Buckner hasn't hit 10 with the Colts yet. So having a player that Chris Ballard has drafted, a player the Colts have been patient with. I mean, look, they took this guy in the second round and off of a torn Achilles, and he didn't play for most of his rookie season. And then when he played his rookie season again, it was still kind of working back from that injury. So now we're seeing this really raw young player who missed most of his rookie season that the Colts still had enough hope in and enough faith in to take him as high as they did, finally hitting that groove and looking like the player they drafted him to be. I would love for him to hit 10 sacks. I'd love for him to hit 10, 11, 12, whatever, keep going, 13, 14, whatever it's going to be. But I love the way he's been playing recently. He's been winning, like you said. He's had the effort sacks. Like he's been still getting those effort ones. I mean, 2 of his sacks this past weekend were big effort sacks or like late in the progression. But he's had one this past game and one against the Panthers where it was very, very clean beats of the right guard where he beat him with the swim move up the middle and just got enough for the quarterback to get the sack. So Dayo Odeyingbo, I think, is playing some great football right now. I hope he continues what he's doing and hits that 10 sack number because that's just a really good number to hit for a pass rusher in general, but especially for a player who is more of a rotational guy and also, is still kind of finding the groove and finding out what he can be.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's good that, like, as Samson Ebukam has kind of cooled down in his pass rush numbers, Dayo has started to heat up. Yeah. So there was a lull there in the middle of the season where the Colts just weren't generating very much pressure, but at least as one guy's kind of fading a little bit, another is kind of making up space for that. And you hope to see, Kwity Paye as well as Ebukam kind of ratchet up the pace a little bit as pass rushers.
Yeah, I will say Ebukam is still hitting the quarterback. He's just not bringing them to the ground. Like that's his issue right now. Like early in the season, he was still getting them and getting to the ground. He's still doing the same thing. He's just not getting them on the ground.
He needs the backup left tackles is what he needs. That's when he was getting the sacks.
Well, he needs like the really, really weak quarterbacks who can't survive even a little bit of contact. He needs like Eli Manning back in there, the fall down sack. That's what he needs out there to get those sacks. But my big prediction here, and I think this one's going to be really bold for people listening and just in general, is I think by the end of this season, we're going to be looking at this starting quarterback trio and say, you know what? I think this is the strength of the defense right now. The starting cornerback trio of Jalen Jones, Juju Brents, and Kenny Moore. Obviously, they got to re-sign Kenny Moore after the season. But I think once all 3 of those guys are back on the field together and they finish this season strong, because I do believe in all 3 of those players quite a bit, I think we're going to look at that trio as like, hey, you know what? That's actually not a bad group whatsoever. I mean, Jalen Jones is playing some really, really good football this season, especially for a 7th round pick. I mean, he's not allowing many passes to be caught. He's really just sound in his technique and just his positioning in general. Juju Brents was playing some really, really good football before this recent injury. And then Kenny Moore looks like Kenny Moore again, like just some really, really great football from him this year. So I think when we're looking back at this cornerback room after the year and we're looking at those 3 starters plus getting Dallas Flowers back next year, I'm not saying that we don't draft a corner still in this next draft or even take one high still, because, it's always great to have as many corners as possible. But I think when we're looking at this cornerback room after the year, we're looking at it like, you know what? It wasn't that bad. Like, it was bad whenever people were hurt. But when we had the starters out there, Jalen Jones being one of those starters now, I think we're going to be looking at it like, okay, yeah, we got something here. These are some good corners that are playing really good football.
Yeah, Jones has been kind of steady Eddie ever since the spring. Like,
yeah,
he's taken a slow upward trajectory, but he's been solid like the whole time. Juju Brents went from a guy who couldn't sniff the field the first couple weeks, while he was getting ready and up to speed in practice, to now the Colts were in big trouble when he got hurt. They threw Tony Brown out there and because they weren't comfortable with Darrell Baker being out there. And so the 2 veteran backups they had behind him, they did not feel as good about as they did with Brent. So I'm right there with you. And again, if you re-sign Kenny and you've got that core 3 group moving forward, I really like the group of corners. My last one here is that so Zaire Franklin in his first year as a extensive starter broke the Colts single season tackle record. He now had 167 is the top mark. Not only is he going to break that one this year, but he's gonna kill it. So right now he's at 117. He's missed a game, still leads the NFL in tackles, was the first player in the league this year to get to 100 tackles. He's on pace for 198. And if you round up, it's 199 if we're going on off decimals. So the NFL record is like 214. I don't think there's quite enough time for him to get the NFL record, but I think he's going to get to 200. Because if you're on pace for 198, you're going to see red. 200 has got to be tattooed on the inside of that guy's eyes right now. So I think he's going to shatter his own record, single season record, and get to 200 tackles.
Yeah, I don't like. Again, I'm not trying to call you out for your prediction here. I don't even think that's bold at this point because it's just who Zaire Franklin is.
200 is a huge mark, though. Again, the NFL record's 214. It would put him among like the top 5 or 7, I think.
Yeah, but he's averaging like 16, 17 tackles a game at this point. Like he's crazy.
If you take the games he's actually played, the 9 he's played, he's averaged 13 tackles a game.
Yeah,
that's nuts. He leads the league in double-digit tackle games, 15 tackle games. Like he's leading all of it and has missed a game.
Yeah, I think it would be huge if Grover were playing this whole season because then he would have more. I don't want to say all of his tackles are not meaningful, but like more meaningful tackles at the line of scrimmage if Grover Stewart were in there because now he's getting forced to have Eric Johnson sitting in his lap every single snap.
Yeah.
But no, I think Zaire Franklin getting 200. I think it's great. I think he certainly can. He's just a tackle machine and again, I did say that some of these tackles in recent weeks have not been as meaningful because they've been 10 yards down the field, but he's a player where it's not very London Fletchery, where it's like, you're tackling the guy 20 yards down the field every single time. Zaire Franklin gets up there. He gets up in the mix of things. He gets tackles around the line of scrimmage. He blows up screen plays and stuff like that. So him getting those 200 tackles would be legit 200 tackles. And I think he's well-deserved of getting to 200. He's going to be well-deserved of breaking the Colts individual season record yet again. But I think that's all we have for today, guys. Again, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. All of our wonderful everydayers can go over to Locked On Sports today. It's here for you guys at 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe to our first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And if you guys don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on X. Also subscribe to us on YouTube where we listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll see you guys back here bright and early on Monday morning.